Billionaire's shocking argument revealed. Waitress unexpectedly translates his true colors. Jenna wiped sweat from her brow, the neon lights of Mabel's diner flickering above like false promises. The smell of burnt toast and fresh coffee filled the air, mingling with the chatter of over-caffeinated regulars. It was Thursday, and word had spread that Richard Sterling was visiting. The name alone sent a shiver through her. She had heard the stories. A titan in business, a man who held the keys to fortunes and dreams. But for her, he was just a reminder of everything she lacked. As the door swung open and he strolled in, Jenna felt her stomach twist. Powerful, confident, he commanded the room. She forced a polite smile, her heart thudding in a rhythm dictated by desperation. Tyler was counting on her, a little boy with big dreams. She had to cling to hers, even if she often felt like surrendering to the weight of existence. With half a dozen plates in hand, Jenna approached Sterling, fighting back the swirl of resentment. Here was a man who could choose lavish meals, while she struggled to scrape by. "Can I get you anything to drink?" she asked, the words tumbling out with practiced ease. But her mind resisted. Don't be another cog in his machine. "My usual," he replied, leaning back, a hint of arrogance glinting in his eye. "Must be nice." Jenna couldn't help but mutter under her breath, her resolve bleeding through the cracks of her facade. She met his gaze, a flicker of defiance sparking within her. "I take pride in what I can afford. Must be hard to see how the other side lives." The din of clattering dishes quieted. Eyes shifted no longer to their meals, but to this unexpected collision. The billionaire smirked, his tone patronizing. "Hard work leads to opportunity, Jenna. It's just how things are." The words pierced her like needles. "And what do you know about hard work, Richard? Do you even understand what it's like to serve a meal or count tips for rent?" Anguish and defiance surged through her, each heartbeat echoing her fears. Everyone watched, phones emerging as the tension snapped like a rubber band. The moment spiraled into a spectacle, a social media firestorm ignited with a simple swipe. Before they knew it, they were embroiled in a battlefield of words. "People like you don't care about real struggle," she shot back, clenching her fists beneath the table. Her voice rose, carrying the weight of those who have battled and broken for survival. She wasn't just a waitress, she was a warrior. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference."
Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. His expression hardened, now marked by something deeper, an unreadable storm behind his eyes. How could someone so isolated ever comprehend her plight? Yet amidst the turmoil, a woman from the back, Mrs. Thompson, raised her voice, claiming she had a secret that linked them. The room gasped, a palpable tension filling the air. Jenna felt the trembling undercurrents of history intertwining, binding their paths. Jenna stood, her heart racing, aware she was navigating an unfamiliar battlefield. As she locked eyes with Richard, she wondered if anything could bridge the divide. There was a chance, hidden beneath layers of privilege and struggle. Could empathy breach the fortress he had built around his heart? But time was ticking. With every second, the weight of expectation bore down on her, each pulse quickening as the crowd held its breath. Would he hear her words? Would she even feel heard? The moment stretched taut, ready to snap, the air thick with unanswered questions, leaving her tangled in desperation and fighting a losing battle for the life she craved. Jenna's heart drummed louder, drowning out the chatter around her. Something had changed in that moment of confrontation, a shift in the atmosphere tinged with possibility. The crowd was rapt, but the intense scrutiny only layered more pressure on her as she stood at the crossroads of her own thoughts. "Let me tell you what hard work means," Jenna started, her voice steadying by sheer will. "It means waking up before dawn, working double shifts, and scrimping on groceries just to keep my little brother's dreams alive." Doubt nibbled at her resolve, but she pressed on, feeling a new fire ignite within. "It means sacrificing every little piece of myself for someone who matters. It's not just a buzzword. It's a lifeline." Richard's smirk faltered, his confidence momentarily shaken, revealing a flicker of intrigue in his icy blue eyes. "That's admirable," he replied, his tone almost curious, but it felt more like a challenge than acknowledgement. "But it must be exhausting to always be a martyr." The audience bristled at his words, but Jenna squared her shoulders, unwilling to let his comment pull her down. "It's not martyrdom when love is the motivation," she countered, feeling her voice gain strength. "I'm not asking for pity, I'm asking for understanding. You think success comes easy, but it's the challenges that shape us. Would you have the same instincts without the struggles?" Daniel, a regular, with whom she had built rapport over countless cups of coffee, chimed in from the sidelines. "It's true. You don't build character in a cushy chair, Richard." His words fell like a stone into the bubbling tension, and Jenna could see the shift in the eyes of those around her.
They were no longer just passive observers, but active participants in something far greater than a petty argument. For a moment, Richard seemed to assess the people around him. The muted disbelief in his expression gave way to something resembling interest. He drew closer, breaking the invisible barrier. "You believe struggle defines a person, Jenna, but what if it's just a part of the journey?" Her pulse wild, Jenna took a step forward. "What has your journey taught you then? How can you leverage your privilege to learn, to grow, rather than retreat into your bubble?" It was a dangerous question, one that teetered on the edge of confrontation, but she was determined to pull out whatever was hidden beneath that glossy exterior. A defensiveness crept into Richard's posture, but Jenna remained undeterred. People like us, those who aren't dealt a winning hand, know what it is to take risks when there's nothing left to lose. Have you ever had to fight for something that truly mattered? His lips thinned as the crowd eagerly awaited his response. Igniting a spark of competitive curiosity, she wasn't merely advocating for herself. She was challenging the validity of his stance, peeling away layers of entitlement to confront the man within. Richards's brow furrowed, the arrogance beginning to recede, like a tide that had finally met resistance. "There's power in the struggle," he murmured with hesitation, his bare confidence faltering before the probing nature of her question. It felt like the walls between them were beginning to crack, each fracture whispering of potential transformation. Quick breaths in the diner echoed like the beating of wings preparing for flight. Could this moment reframe their narratives? Was it possible for Richard to see the value in hard work that didn't come with a silver spoon? The atmosphere charged like static, and Jenna felt immensely alive. The weight of her circumstances suddenly transformed into purpose. She was no longer just a waitress or an observer of her life. She was a participant in a profound exchange, discovering her voice amid the chaos. But as Richard stood silent, intent weighing heavily in his mind, Jenna realized she was also standing at a precipice. One decision could catapult her life into a new trajectory. Would she continue pushing this man to confront his truths, or would she retreat into the comfortable shadows of her previous existence? As Jenna braced for his next words, her stomach twisted with anticipation, knowing deep down that this moment could either propel her towards her dreams or shatter everything she had fought for. What would Richard ultimately decide? The silence stretched, a taut wire vibrating with unspoken words. Jenna could feel the weight of every gaze upon her, the energy in the room coalescing into a singular force. Richard's struggle was evident, and she sensed the unveiling of layers behind his porcelain mask. "Why do you keep pushing?"
he finally asked, his voice lower, more contemplative. "You talk about struggle as if it's some noble pursuit, but what if it leads only to bitterness?" Her heart raced. This wasn't merely an opportunity to advocate for herself anymore. It had spiraled into something more profound. Bitterness is a choice, Richard. Struggle offers us a lens, an opportunity to see our potential. The question isn't whether it will make me bitter, but whether it will forge me stronger. There it was, the moment where bravado could shift into vulnerability. She watched as his expression morphed from defensiveness to a contemplative crease of his brow. His demeanor was cracking, exposing a glimpse of uncertainty. Could she pull him further into the open? As the crowd held its breath, Jenna seized the moment. "Your world appears perfect, yet I see that you're curious about pain. You've built walls of privilege, but it seems like you're also trapped behind them. Do you want to learn or just defend?" Richard shifted slightly, his eyes narrowing, and she thought she detected a flicker of understanding. "You make it sound easy," he replied, almost absently. "But how does someone like me even begin to understand?" "It starts with listening," she shot back, each word a cathartic release. "You're used to commanding, but when was the last time you allowed yourself to be vulnerable? What do you feel when looking at people who struggle?"
It was a question dripping with vulnerability, a dagger aimed not at Richard, but at the system he represented. Silence enveloped them again. Jenna's nerves buzzed, blending excitement and fear. If Richard could summon the courage to respond, this could shift their trajectories altogether. "I've never felt like I could share my feelings," he admitted, barely above a whisper. "I've always been the one meant to provide answers." "Maybe it's time to shift the narrative," Jenna urged, a quiet urgency in her voice. "Success isn't synonymous with being infallible. You can embrace your flaws and still be a leader. In fact, it would make you a better one." For the first time, Richard's icy facade cracked completely, revealing a vulnerability Jenna had not anticipated. "I don't know how to start," he confessed, the words heavy on his tongue. "Start by acknowledging that your success doesn't diminish someone else's struggle. Instead of viewing them as a hurdle, see them as a part of your learning curve. We each have a story, including you. What will yours be?" His gaze bore through her, raw and still, an oscillating blend of uncertainty and intrigue. It was clear he was grappling with possibilities he had never considered. Jenna took a breath, internally urging him to grasp the potential for something greater. The moment hung between them, thick with possibility, a lifetime suspended in tension, rich with newfound awareness. Would he step off his pedestal and confront his own misconceptions?
Or would he retreat into the comforts of what he knew, unable to navigate the complexities of shared humanity? And then, capturing their audience anew, Richard spoke. "What does that mean for you? Are you open to what success looks like when it's shared?" The question landed like a bombshell, echoing with weight, and Jenna's mind raced. This was it. The conversations they were having weren't just about personal transformations. They could reshuffle the foundations of privilege and effort alike. But could she be ready for the responsibility of the answer? As the weight of his questions seeped into her thoughts, Jenna knew she was on the brink of a revelation, not just for herself, but for Richard too. Would they both emerge from this unscathed, or would the confrontation challenge everything they knew about their identities? Her heart thudded painfully as she weighed her options. There was no turning back. This was her moment to define success, not just for herself, but for him as well. "Let's redefine it together," Jenna finally replied, her determination unwavering. But with those words came a haunting reflection. Would she truly be brave enough to accept the consequences of what that definition could entail? The air shifted in the room, thick with tension as Richard's unguarded question hung like a weight. Jenna's heart quickened. The conversation was rapidly spilling beyond their immediate exchange, unearthing layers of complexity that tied into their very identities. She had laid bare a wound, and now she could feel it pulse, an invitation for deeper exploration. "Are you ready for what that means?" Richard pressed, his tone still tentative but transformed. There was a flicker of resolve in his gaze, one that burned against the backdrop of his typically guarded demeanor. Jenna sensed the delicate negotiation taking place within him, the push and pull between the comfort of maintaining the status quo and the daunting path of self-discovery. "Yes, I must be," Jenna replied, the steadiness of her own voice surprising her. It was no longer just about advancing her position or advocating for herself. It was about inviting change into Richard's world. The possibility sent a surge of adrenaline through her, each heartbeat a reminder that transformation was possible, but perilous. Tension spooled out into the crowd, eyes afire with curiosity, awaiting the next turn. Jenna pondered her words, reflecting on how much was at stake. "Success is not a single destination," she began, her voice holding the weight of every lesson learned through her own battles. "It's an evolving story expanded through shared experiences. It's being able to extend hands across divides instead of building walls." Richard seemed to absorb her words, a silent battle evident in the tightening of his jaw. Then, with a hesitant, vulnerable breath, he countered, "But what if sharing that success leaves me with less? What if it diminishes all I've built?"
His question struck Jenna like a hammer, but it also sparked a fiery resolve within her. What you've built is formidable, but have you considered the possibility that true success multiplies when shared? Sharing doesn't mean sacrificing, it's about expanding. Jenna paused, the implication of their conversation swirling around them. Had he even entertained the thought that an ally could strengthen his foundation rather than erode it? A new narrative was planted in their minds, a budding curiosity that had the potential to redefine not only how Richard viewed himself, but how he could re-engage with the world beyond privilege. As she spoke, Jenna sensed a shift within herself as well. She wasn't merely challenging Richard, she was embracing the mantle of leadership, poised to guide them both into uncharted territory. Her own growth was woven into the fabric of this exchange. Could it be that her experiences, her struggles, could elevate his understanding and, in turn, her own? Your wealth isn't just material, it's an opportunity, Jenna continued, her confidence growing with every syllable. By acknowledging the accomplishments of others, you're not diluting your own. Instead, you're adding new dimensions to it. You can influence, inspire, and pave the way for a community far beyond what the dollar can quantify. Richard's brow furrowed as he wrestled with the implications. Jenna felt the heat of her words linger, filling the space between them with transformative energy. Would he grasp the chance for evolution, or would he retreat into the familiar comforts of privilege? After a long pause that felt like it stretched eternity, he finally spoke again. What if my history makes that impossible? What if I'm too broken to change? None of us are beyond repair, she asserted gently. It's about taking those fragments, your successes and your failures, and finding a way to weave them into something new. You don't need to shoulder it all. You need to share the burden. Jenna's conviction surged through her, propelling her thoughts forward. But with that conviction came an understanding of the fragile line they were treading. Richard's eyes widened slightly, as though some hidden truth danced just out of reach of his comprehension. Can you, and by extension I, actually make that shift? Yes, she breathed, tempered with an exhilarating mix of hope and fear. But it will take real work. It will demand we confront not just external barriers, but our own internal ones. As she spoke, she felt the stakes rise. They stood on the precipice of transformative change, not just for Richard, but for her as well. The moment brimmed with potential, but uncertainty tugged at her very core. Had she pushed too hard? Was she opening doors that were meant to stay shut? Suddenly, the audience's whispers intensified, a subtle reminder that change in one life could ripple through the fabric of many.
Jenna steeled herself, ready to face whatever might emerge from this awakening. Richard eyed her with a new intensity, the weight of his decision palpable in the air. Then let's do this together. But, he added, resolution creeping into his tone, you need to show me what that looks like. You'll have to lead the way. With those words resonating, Jenna felt the dawning realization that they were both standing at the edge of uncharted waters, the currents of their choices surging anxiously beneath. She took a deep breath, her mind racing with visions of both possibility and peril. Leadership, she would discover, was far more than a role. It was a commitment to navigate risk. I will, she affirmed, her determination solidifying. But know this, stepping toward change can ignite fires we may not be ready to handle. Richard nodded slowly, but there was a challenge behind his gaze. And let's hope those fires lead us somewhere we both want to go. She understood then. The real journey was about to begin, born of their revealed truths and intertwined destinies. What lay ahead would be fraught with challenge, but it was a necessity she could no longer ignore. With a newfound resolve pulsing through her veins, Jenna sensed they were stepping into an unpredictable landscape where boundaries would blur and real growth would demand sacrifices. Would courage lead them to enlightenment, or would their respective fears pull them apart? The room exhaled, holding its collective breath, and as Jenna squared her shoulders, she could feel the dawning tumult of an impending storm. Would they withstand the consequences of their budding alliance? Could success redefine their legacies as allies rather than antagonists? The moment had arrived to confront the depths of their convictions, for within their shared exploration lay the keys to their own metamorphoses. Jenna felt the weight of his words settle like a thick fog around them. The intangible threads binding her fate to Richard's tightened, sending a shiver up her spine. A sense of urgency enveloped her, demanding action and clarity. There was no turning back now. For the first time she glimpsed the vast terrain of growth that awaited them both, and with it came the gnawing sense of vulnerability that accompanied transformation. She initiated their journey, offering Richard a roadmap. Let's start small. Identify how your position and influence can uplift others instead of being a source of division. As she spoke, Jenna's body hummed with adrenaline, propelled by the weight of possibility. Richard looked thoughtful, a storm brewing behind his eyes.
And if sharing my wealth or platform opens me to challenges I might not know how to face? His gaze faltered for a moment, revealing the insecurity lurking beneath his polished exterior. The hesitation sliced at her tasks, weaving every doubt into a tapestry of compelling fear. Jenna's heart pounded as she fought to counter his hesitancy.
Every leader grapples with uncertainty. The challenge is harnessing that uncertainty as a catalyst. You have everything to gain by stepping into the unknown. An internal battle played out in his face. Doubt battled inspiration as his quiet resolve gave way to mixed emotions. And what if I lose control over my own narrative? Richard's words felt like a challenge, a duel crafted within the texture of emerging trust and risk. Then let's rewrite your narrative together, she suggested, her voice steady, buoyed by the belief she was cultivating within herself. What if we crafted a vision that allows others to join us? You've spoken about your legacy. Consider how it might shift if you provided a platform for those historically silenced. The flicker of potential in Richard's expression gave her the courage to keep pushing. He finally leaned in, the vulnerability in his demeanor palpable. And who would I be without my defenses? What happens if I lose that identity? The implications echoed in her mind. The very foundations of their identities had become intertwined and unsteady. It's about rediscovering who you can be when you allow yourself to be seen, flaws included. Each piece you've built can evolve into something greater. Jenna's pulse quickened as she spoke, ignited by the urgency of their shared purpose. They stood on the brink of a monumental shift, not just for them, but for others who might witness their evolution. It was imperative that the bridge they were constructing didn't collapse under the weight of doubt. We can't disregard what lies beneath the surface of success, she insisted. By letting others into your world, you fortify your purpose. You move from a singular figure to a formidable force that uplifts rather than isolates. You need to be deliberate in how you engage. Richard's breathing deepened, a tangible sign that he was deciphering the complexity of her words. How do I begin to make that switch? It feels daunting, overwhelming even. Start by taking small risks, Jenna encouraged. The words felt heavy with authority as they rolled off her tongue. Begin conversations with those you might have overlooked. Share stories. Create spaces for dialogue instead of dictation. Challenge your preconceptions. From the smallest actions, you can build momentum. Richard nodded, an ember of determination igniting in his eyes, coupled with a determined intensity. But doubt still lingered just beneath the surface, and Jenna knew she needed to navigate it skillfully. And what if these new connections unravel my reality? What if I lose what I have built? The question hung between them, heavy with unspoken fear and yearning. Jenna took a breath, her heart resonating with the weight of their exchange. Then we rebuild, brick by brick. Personal growth isn't linear, it's messy and complex, but forging connections can carve a path to a legacy that truly matters.
As she finished speaking, the murmurs of the crowd grew louder, merging with the cacophony of her racing thoughts. The urgency of this moment bore down on her as she felt the teetering balance of risk and reward escalate profoundly. In that charged silence, Jenna realized they were not just on the verge of personal transformation. They were poised to redefine success against a backdrop of vulnerability and trust. But to truly break free, they both needed to confront the hardest truths about themselves, not just the glimmering facades they had shown the world. "Let's take that leap together," Richard finally said, the resolve in his voice firm, yet tinged with uncertainty. "Show me how far this goes. Show me what true leadership requires." The challenge was clearer than ever, and with renewed clarity, Jenna knew she was about to embark on a fight not only to reshape Richard, but also to excavate the deeper layers of her own identity. Was she prepared for the backlash that might follow? As they stood together, teetering on the precipice of change, Jenna felt the storm within her, her doubts, aspirations, and ambitions colliding in a whirlwind of possibility. There was no turning back now, not when the very essence of who they were had the potential to evolve into something greater. But at what cost would their transformations come? As the room vibrated with unsettled energy, one question loomed larger than any other. Were they truly ready to unleash the fires of change, knowing that the future would be uncertain? Her heart raced, knowing that the moment of reckoning was imminent. Jenna took a calculated breath, drawing strength from the tension hanging heavily in the air. The uncertainty surrounding their promises loomed like a dark cloud, but the spark in Richard's eyes was undeniable.
It signaled that a shift was beginning to take shape. "Let's start by reframing your narrative today," she urged, pushing through the uncertainty that threatened to smother her enthusiasm. "What if we tweak how you interact with your employees? What if you make it a priority to listen to them instead of simply directing them? The old model has served you, but it's also kept you from seeing the bigger picture." Richard leaned back, threading his fingers together thoughtfully. "I suppose I've always seen leadership as a layer of authority, something solid and unyielding," he replied, his voice wavering slightly. "What if that softness is misinterpreted as weakness?" "A true leader adapts," Jenna's voice carried conviction. "Consider this. Vulnerability can be a strength. People trust those who own their imperfections. Make it clear to your team that their voices matter. You might find insights that could transform your approach." She watched him absorb her words, a flicker of comprehension crossing his face.
Unbeknownst to her, Richard's mind was racing through the challenges he faced within his company hierarchy, the conversations that were never had, the talent that remained dormant. "Where do I even begin?" he asked, the once polished persona showing cracks beneath the pressure of genuine introspection. The crisis of identity was surfacing, wrestling with his instinct to maintain control. Jenna hesitated before responding, weighing the power of her next words. "Start with a simple acknowledgement of their contributions. Send a message that isn't about your achievements, but rather a reflection on theirs. It's about building a culture where everyone feels invested." Richard nodded, but his brow furrowed slightly. "And if I fail? What if they don't respond? What if this backfires?" "Then you get back up and try again," she answered firmly. "Resilience isn't the absence of failure, it's learning from every setback. Think back to your path. Each time you reached a plateau, didn't you find a way to reinvent yourself? This journey is no different." Her directness cut through the uncertainty, fortifying the brief connection they had formed. It was transformative. They were shaping one another through this dialogue, and Jenna could sense that both their destinies were now woven into the fabric of a much larger enterprise. "All right," Richard finally said, his voice gaining strength. "I think I can start with that, acknowledging their hard work. It feels like it could change everything, but it also feels unsettling." "Growth is unsettling," Jenna affirmed, emboldened by his willingness to embrace discomfort. "You have to lean into it and invite others to do the same. Your leadership will shift fundamentally as you collectively lean away from hierarchy and towards collaboration. It will take time to cultivate trust, but remember, it begins with you." As the conversation swelled with urgency, Jenna felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins. Richard's transformation was nascent yet vital. It no longer merely hovered within the realm of aspiration, it was on the brink of being realized. "I want to dive deeper into this," he stated forcefully, the new vigor in his voice resonating through the air. "I'll make room for their voices. It's a bit terrifying, but I see now that it's vital for real change. Can we craft that message together?" Jenna's heart raced at the prospect of forging this path together, yet a nagging doubt crept in, a sense of apprehension about whether he could truly embrace the shift. "Absolutely," she agreed, glancing around the crowd, aware that the environment would either mirror or amplify their progress. "But remember, it is a journey. Prepare to face skepticism. Change breeds resistance. You might even question it yourself at times." Richard's expression hardened with resolve. "Nothing worthwhile is easy. I want to lead them, not merely dictate. It's time for this to happen." As they crafted strategies, Jenna felt an exhilarating rush. The pivot toward authenticity mirrored her own latent ambitions. Yet shadows of hesitation loomed large, as the desire to maintain both personal and professional identity collided with the task ahead. What would their first meeting reveal about Richard, and by extension, herself? Would they emerge emboldened, or would the dust of resistance cling to hopes still untested? Uncertainty hovered between them, as compelling as the mission they were crafting. Would they shatter the boundaries of their reality, or would they be ensnared by the fear of the unknown? The moment of truth approached, and with it came the realization that reshaping the core of their identities was now inextricably tied to the legacy they were about to create. Jenna clenched her jaw, fortified by the belief in their potential. How far would they need to go before the final fear dissolved into their resolve? The answer felt tantalizingly close, yet dauntingly distant.
With every name he dropped, she could see a flicker of interest and disbelief set in among the gathered crowd. However, skepticism didn't die easily. One employee, Sarah, raised her hand hesitantly, her voice slicing through the charged atmosphere. "You're asking us to trust you now, after being ignored for so long?" Jenna's heart raced. This was a pivotal moment. Richard could easily retreat, an instinctive response to defend against the attack, or he could lean into vulnerability as they had discussed. He inhaled deeply, the moment stretching thin like a taut wire. "You're right, and I don't expect blind faith. Trust is earned through action, not just words. I want to hear from you. What can I do to better support you?" The room held its breath, teetering on the edge of either allegiance or rebellion. Richard's openness became a mirror reflecting their own latent frustrations and aspirations. Jenna saw the wheels turning in the minds of those around her. This was where real transformation might flourish or falter. As voices began to emerge, some tentative, others emboldened, Richard's resolve fortified. Each response offered a glimmer of potential, a collective yearning for genuine engagement. Jenna felt a rush of adrenaline. This was no longer a transaction, but a dialogue, a chance for unearthing new perspectives, her greatest hope unfurling in real time. But as the enthusiasm grew, so did her internal turmoil. What if this conversation, rich with promise and connection, started to expose the fractures within their hierarchy? What lays concealed in the depths of their ambitions? Jenna sensed her own future intertwining with the outcomes of this pivotal moment. Would this shift embolden others to explore their own vulnerabilities, or would the safety net of old behaviors reassert itself, suffocating their resolve? As the meeting drew to a close, applause erupted in unexpected solidarity. Yet the question lingered in Jenna's mind, percolating that initial tension. What if the cracks revealed through this process exposed her own hidden aspirations? She glanced at Richard, whose eyes sparkled with an amalgamation of relief and hope. He had dipped his toes into the unknown, but they had yet to venture deeper. And just as doubt had begun to lessen, a flicker of panic struck her. The next steps were paramount. Would he continue to embrace this journey, or fall back into his old ways when confronted with the realities of change? The challenge before them was formidable, but it was a challenge Jenna felt compelled to confront. The unfurling journey would demand even greater courage from both of them. What revelations awaited as Richard faced resistance anew? Would they unravel the threads of tradition, or find themselves ensnared by its grasp? As the applause subsided, Jenna sat in a daze, the tide of emotions crashing within her. The conversation had taken a turn. Richard's candidness had sparked a light, but now shadows loomed larger.
Excitement morphed into apprehension as she contemplated the road ahead. Would the team's newfound engagement hold, or would the old guard of behavior suffocate their budding trust? After the meeting, Jenna approached Richard, who was still absorbing the energy in the room. "You did well," she said, forcing a reassuring smile. "But we need to keep the momentum. That wasn't just a performance, it has to be a catalyst." Richard nodded absently, clearly still reveling in the applause, while Lisa, one of the quieter employees, drifted past, her expression still a mix of confusion and cautious optimism. "I think it was a good start, Jenna, but how do we sustain this? They're still skeptical," he replied, his brow furrowing under the weight of expectation he had thrust upon himself. In that moment, Jenna saw him not just as a flawed leader, but as someone ready to address his shortcomings. "What are your plans for tomorrow?" she asked, leaning closer, intrigued by how he intended to further this dialogue. "I thought maybe we could set smaller sessions with teams, give them space to express their thoughts," Richard replied. Yet Jenna detected a hesitation. It was not only about providing a space, but also about confronting his own fears, allowing vulnerability to continue flowing both ways. "How about starting with our team? You need to show them you're committed to this change," she suggested, the adrenaline sparking ideas. "But first, let's talk about acceptance. You can't expect them to come directly to you. It needs to be an open invitation." Richard paled slightly. "You mean confronting them again? What if they turn on me?" "They might. Or they might surprise you too. Remember, you set the tone today. You have to reinforce that you're not the fortress anymore. You're a collaborator," she replied, eager to instill confidence in him. As the sun dipped below the horizon, streetlights flickering to life outside, Jenna felt an unfamiliar blend of responsibility. Could her influence steer Richard away from doubt and into a realm of true leadership? Would she have the courage to share her own vulnerabilities amidst guiding him? This question weighed on her mind as she returned to her desk, scanning her reflection in the monitor. What would her role look like if their paths were to intertwine in this newfound venture? Would she become the voice of change,
or would the old rhythms of their environment crush her aspirations before they could bloom? Days turned into a strategy session as Richard began to take the lead in organizing team huddles. Jenna worked alongside him, her insights sharpening. She articulated not only expectations but also boundaries for their dialogue. She encouraged Richard to prepare not just for questions, but for the emotional impacts as the layers peeled back, revealing the scars left by years of neglect. At night, Jenna lay awake, pondering the ethical implications of their actions.
Each step into vulnerability could lead to revelation, but it could also backfire severely in a workplace that had learned to shut down emotion. The stakes felt astronomically high, and the potential fallout paralleled the rising excitement. As days passed, their sessions were met with mixed results. Some employees stepped forth with poignant insights, others remained withdrawn. Throughout these attempts, the once fortified Richard began to evolve. Glimpses of authenticity transformed him, yet insecurities still clawed at Jenna's resolve. When Sarah approached her one afternoon, her brow arched. Jenna sensed potential danger. "Why are we doing this, Jenna? I mean, really, does he care?" "Because he's trying," Jenna asserted, unsure of her own conviction, but determined to validate Richard's efforts. The air hummed with optimism, but crackled with skepticism. Jenna could no longer ignore the gnawing feeling that doubt was marinated in. As they prepared for one more team meeting, a tickle of excitement mingled with dread. She was beginning to question her own motives. Was she truly invested in Richard's success, or was she trying to fashion a better version of herself through him? Would they break through the final barriers that remained, or would the deep-seated hesitancies choke the potential off before it could flourish into something meaningful? The answer lay just around the corner, but first, they needed to unveil the heart of the matter, the confrontation that loomed larger than both of their aspirations. Would Jenna find the courage to question not just Richard's leadership, but her own desire to create change? As Richard prepared to step into the next meeting, Jenna could feel the ground shifting beneath them. What truths would the room confront, and what hard conversations awaited them where trust hung by a thread? Jenna's heart raced as they entered the conference room. The air felt electric, charged with an undercurrent of expectation. Richard stood at the head of the long table, but his usual commanding presence wavered slightly. He glanced at Jenna, and she could see the familiar flicker of doubt shadowing his determination. Time seemed to stretch as the team filed in, their faces a mix of enthusiasm and wariness. Jenna sensed the need for clarity. This wasn't just another meeting. It needed to be a turning point. She took a deep breath, steadied herself against the onslaught of anxiety, and took her seat, a visible anchor of support for Richard. "Welcome, everyone," Richard began, his voice slightly wavering. "Today, we're here to talk about what's next for our team and how we can grow together." The moment felt precarious. Some eyes darted toward the door. Others were fixed on Richard, anticipating either a breakthrough or a breakdown. Jenna leaned forward, creating an unspoken bridge of solidarity. As Richard outlined his vision for the meeting, Jenna noted a shift in his demeanor. He was trying, a raw form of authenticity.
"I know I haven't been approachable in the past. I want to change that," he admitted, looking directly at the assembled team. "But I need your help. Your voices matter." Jenna felt a powerful surge of pride. This vulnerability was what she had envisioned from the first moment. But could it truly resonate with the team that had been conditioned to suppress their feelings? The first response startled her, a sudden silence followed by a sharp intake of breath from Lisa. "What do you mean by you need our help?" she asked, her voice tinged with skepticism. The other team members murmured in low tones, the tension palpable. Richard paused, and Jenna could see a storm brewing in his mind. This was the critical moment. He could either retreat or push forward. "I can't lead alone," he replied, and Jenna felt that he was stepping closer to better leadership. "I need to understand your challenges. Your feedback is essential for us to succeed." The room held its breath. Before Jenna could open her mouth to reinforce Richard's sentiments, Sarah chimed in. "But it seems like we have been giving feedback for years. What's different now?" The challenge in her voice contained a lingering bitterness that stirred the atmosphere. Richard's brow furrowed, but Jenna seized the opportunity. "I understand the hesitation, Sarah," she interjected, her decision impulsive yet calculated. "What we're offering is genuine collaboration. We want you to have a stake in this process, to bring your ideas and concerns without fear of retribution. This is a fresh start." Discomfort flickered across some faces, as shadows of doubt transformed into threads of hope. But Jenna could feel a knot in her stomach, the weight of their societal conditioning pressed against the walls of their conversation. Jenna glanced at Richard, and in that moment she realized she was shifting too. This wasn't just about supporting him, but stepping into her own role as a leader. We're not just looking for positive feedback. We want honest, even difficult conversations, she encouraged, feeling bolder. Together, we can navigate the shadows. As individuals began to share insights, Jenna noted a change in the group dynamic. Voices emerged, some exuding passion, while others revealed hidden frustrations. A discussion flourished, a collective unearthing of perspectives, long buried under layers of indifference. But as the meeting progressed and truth surfaced, Jenna's internal dialogue began to fester. Was she doing this for Richard, or was it a path towards her own empowerment? This realization spun her thoughts. Every shared insight echoed her own desire for validation. The very act of coaxing vulnerability from others revealed her motivations were far more complex than she had once believed. The meeting concluded with mixed emotions. Some exchanged uncertain smiles, while others were expressions of cautious optimism.
Richard stepped down from his position at the table, an entirely different leader. Yet she felt a lingering question between them, a question of purpose. As they gathered their things, Jenna confronted Richard. "Do you really think this was a breakthrough?" "Maybe. I felt them opening up," he responded. But Jenna noticed the tremor in his voice, uncertainty still haunting him. "Then we must reinforce it. We have to encourage those moments," she said, a plan forming in her mind. "My commitment is to help you, but we both need to embrace our vulnerabilities if we want true change." He nodded slowly, but in that moment, Jenna recognized a hidden fear in him, the fear of failure persistent in both of them. This tension solidified as they prepared for their next steps. What if the fragile foundation they worked to create shattered under the weight of reality? Would they rise again, or fall back into the familiar, safe silence? The silence between them wrapped like a shroud, as possibilities flickered in the space between them. Could they sustain the momentum, or would this path lead to an unexpected confrontation of their deepest insecurities? Days turned into weeks, and the new approach Richard and Jenna embraced transformed the atmosphere of the office. Employees engaged more openly, offering honest feedback and challenging the status quo in ways that once seemed unimaginable. Yet behind this facade of growth, tensions simmering beneath the surface threatened to untether their fragile progress. Jenna vividly recalled the moment when Sarah, once an eager participant, had retreated into her shell. The corner of the break room witnessed her defiance against Richard's suggestions, a subtle spark igniting a rebellion among staff who were still clinging to skepticism. Jenna felt the fabric of their emergent culture tugged tight, a dangerous reminder of the old power dynamics still lurking, waiting to ensnare them all. As vaults of history began to crack, Richard paced outside the conference room, visibly anxious. Inwardly, Jenna struggled with her own rising doubts. She had believed that guiding Richard would elevate both of them, but as the chips began to fall, she questioned her role in this evolving dynamic. Her motivations for change blurred ever more, igniting a tension she hadn't prepared for. "Is this what we want?" Jenna questioned one afternoon, as they prepared for another mixed feedback session. "Are we truly building a team, or just reshaping the hierarchy?" Richard's brow furrowed as he grappled with the implications of her words. "We're not reverting," he said firmly, but with a hint of uncertainty in his voice. Yet uncertainty redoubled. When faced with the pushback from employees, how would he keep the momentum from reversing? Jenna felt the camaraderie they had built teetering on the brink. With both courage and vulnerability, Jenna approached Richard during a break.
"I know the direction might seem a bit wobbly, but what if we invite them to co-create solutions? Explore why some are resistant and what they need from us." A flicker of understanding passed over his features. "It's about genuine collaboration," he mused, tapping his fingers against the table. "But what if they reject that? What if they feel betrayed?" "If we allow them to voice their struggles, it creates a path for growth," she asserted. "We can't be afraid of discomfort or what they might reveal. They may uncover truths we need to tackle, but we both have to embrace this journey together." Richard's nod was tentative, but there was a spark igniting in him. He took a deep breath and allowed Jenna to take the lead in crafting a plan for an open forum, dedicating a session to discuss fears directly, embracing skepticism head-on. The day of the forum arrived, energy swirling as employees gathered in the conference room once again. Jenna sensed anticipation mingled with apprehension as she rose to speak.
Thank you all for being here. Today is about acknowledging what we have all felt, the shifts, the tension, the uncertainties. The focus shifted to Richard, who took his place beside her at the table. I know my previous leadership may have felt exclusionary, he began, his voice resonating with authenticity. But I recognize the need for openness and honesty. This isn't just about me listening. It's about us confronting and understanding our obstacles together. The crowd dissolved into murmurs as they processed Richard's radical admission, opening the floodgates. The first voice, familiar yet distant, emerged from Sarah. If we're supposed to collaborate, why didn't you ask us about it in the first place? His response faltered. I suppose I thought I was supposed to provide the answers. That's the problem, chimed in Lisa. You have to let us be part of painting the picture. It feels like you don't care about our input. Richard's vulnerability amplified the tension, revealing the core fissures of unmet expectations. But as Jenna prepared herself for the inevitable resistance, another employee's intervention turned the tide. I think we've all felt that way at some point, Richard, Mike interjected. We've been waiting for a chance to say something, so thank you for bringing this to light. Jenna held her breath, pulse racing. Could they shift the narrative entirely? Gradually, voices began to coalesce with cautious optimism. They began to express their fears, whether it was about a lack of career advancement or the need for mentorship. The conversation took on a life of its own, and Jenna could almost feel the weight of the past peeling away, replaced by new threads of collaboration and trust. As Richard absorbed the feedback, Jenna felt an exhilarating rush of potential, a palpable transformation swirling in the air. The old hierarchy was morphing into an evolving partnership.
This moment held significance not just for Richard as a leader, but for her as well. She saw herself reflecting in the evolution, her dreams of empowerment flourishing through the voices of others. When the forum concluded, an atmosphere of renewed commitment washed over the room. Employees felt genuinely heard, which sparked a conversation that set the stage for the next chapter. Richard gazed around the room, taking in the shared revelations that had unfolded. Thank you for your honesty today, he said, sincerity coating his words. I promise to prioritize your insights moving forward. We are all in this together, and your voices matter just as much as mine. Jenna felt a swell of pride as the applause drew a curtain on their first collective step toward true collaboration. Richard had traversed the chasm of his wealth and privilege, and she had emerged alongside him as a catalyst for change. She felt the ashes of their insecurities morph into a burgeoning foundation of trust that had the power to reframe their dynamics. In that moment, she understood this journey was not just about reshaping Richard, but fortifying her own sense of empowerment. It wasn't about reclaiming an identity diminished by the specter of self-doubt. It was about redefining success as a collective undertaking. By the end of the meeting, Jenna felt a newfound confidence swell within her, rooted in both vulnerability and tenacity. What had once felt like a weight now served as a buoyant strength that propelled her forward. The next steps lay ahead, a blend of both challenges and opportunities ripe for exploration. Uncertainty no longer became a hindrance, but a chance to embrace the uncharted territory together. As she locked eyes with Richard, the silent acknowledgement passed between them. It was a shared journey of transformation, ready for unveiling the depths of growth waiting to be realized. With that clarity crystallizing in her mind, Jenna stepped into that future, prepared to seize the potential that yearned to break free. The weight of the past slowly dissipated, revealing the promise of what was to come, a new narrative built upon shared experiences and open dialogue. She had conquered her fears, transformed her leadership ambitions, and emerged not just as an ally, but as an architect of inspired change. The evolution had begun, and as they both stood on the brink of their renewed purpose, the world outside welcomed their rebirth. To those reading their journey, this moment's essence beckons for deep and resonant action. You need to subscribe now to experience more transformative stories like this. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support content that inspires change. Comment your thoughts and reactions to this conclusion. What did it mean for you? Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to empower their own journeys towards growth.
Only true fans of personal and professional evolution understand the importance of supporting each other through these actions. Don't wait even one more second to be part of something greater.